Hello, welcome to Ray-ality TV. I'm your host, Raymond Bukhari, and today I'm joined by Alan Waters, who was the Republican nominee versus Senator Jack Reed in the 2020 election, and now a candidate for 2022 in Rhode Island's 1st Congressional District. Mr. Waters, how are you today?
I'm doing fabulous. I'm looking forward to the rest of the year as spring is upon us now, and hopefully some of our COVID restrictions will be reduced so that it's easier to be among the community and meet people and introduce myself on my congressional run.
Hopefully it does cool down with the COVID restrictions as more vaccines get administered, and it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Just diving right into it here, you are running in the 1st Congressional District versus Congressman Cicilline. What made you want to run for Congress, and why are you better to represent the district than Congressman Cicilline?
Well, when we look at from national to Rhode Island problems, we still need to make sure that people have more jobs, more affordable housing. We need to deal with climate change in a balanced way so that we maintain a portfolio of different types of energy, such as from nuclear power to carbon to renewables. Also, I'm looking at things such as we need to bring the country back to its center. It seems now politically our country's getting pulled more and more to the left. And I don't think that's good for the country because pretty much we're balanced between conservatives and liberals and certainly a lot of moderates in our country. We need someone to help bring America together and hopefully back to our center core so that we can make the country a better place.
And while you are running for the 1st Congressional District, there is a possibility that Rhode Island does lose a seat and then turns into one at-large Congressional District, which would represent the whole state. When I had interviewed the Republican candidate for the 2nd Congressional District, Bob Lancey, who's running against Jim Langevin, he was doubtful that this would happen, and a lot of those on the right are doubtful that it would happen. He cited the reasons that because President Biden wants to include undocumented citizens in the census count, that was his reasoning for it. If the event where we do lose a seat does occur, what are your plans for this campaign, since you would most likely end up running against Rep. Lancia in a statewide Republican primary? And do you feel your campaign would be well prepared for a possible statewide campaign against most likely Congressman Cicilline if this were to occur?
Well, we're still building the campaign, the volunteers, trying to raise the funds. I did run for U.S. Senate, but this is a whole new ball game. I plan to run for Congress, whether there's 2 congressional districts or 1 congressional district. The advantage for an upstart politician or an upstart sort of candidate that's perhaps not well established, having held a major office or something, or maybe having personal wealth that you can, I like to say, throw at the problem. Rhode Island's small, so you can still do some grassroots efforts to build name recognition by just being out there among the people from westerly to Woonsocket.
And you feel your campaign would be well prepared for the shift to statewide district?
Absolutely. I have people that have been supporting me all the way through. If you look at my social media, such as Facebook, I have a decent reach. It needs to continue to grow. But most importantly, what are the people looking for in Rhode Island? We have this 2-party system, Democrats for Republicans, but I think there's a lot of people in Rhode Island that recognize that if we're going to grow the economy, we're going to protect our American culture, our traditional values, if we're going to protect the American people, maybe a Republican might be a good idea. Every now and then we slip in, but I would love to see, which may not happen in my lifetime, Rhode Island be more of a purple state where it's more balanced between Democrats and Republicans, always assuming that there'll just be always more Democrats in a statewide office or in the General Assembly.
And if there isn't a loss of a congressional seat, you would still be running in the 1st district. And this is considered a safe blue district. Congressman Cicilline had his best performance for that seat in 2020, where he had gotten 70% of the vote. Realistically, what do you see your chances being of winning this seat in 2022?
Well, I'll tell you, when we look at Cicilline's record, When we look at the fact that he spent the people's money, the Treasury, trying to twice defeat or impeach President Trump. When you look at the fact that people have to ask questions, they have to say, what has David Cicilline brought to the table for the people of Rhode Island? And I think a lot of people will answer, not much. He's a great figurehead. He holds the seat for the Democratic Party. That's very powerful. But when it comes down to Mr. and Mrs. Rhode Island, and I think that David Cicilline is beatable. And one of the other things, the economy is cyclical. And we've had an extended super run in terms of economic expansion. Certainly it's been set back by the COVID lockdown and these environments. But at some point, if the Democrats raise taxes, if they keep borrowing money that the country really can't afford, at some point the economy is probably going to shrink. And you know what? That's a perfect time for a change of seats, as when people realize that they need change. They need something better in order to make Rhode Island a better place, as well as make America stronger again.
And kind of shifting the focus to your political origins, because you did mention in one of those answers in one of the previous questions that you had ran for Senate against Senator Reid. In your bid in 2020 against Senator Reid, one of the controversies within that campaign cycle was the Rhode Island GOP did withdraw their endorsement from you. Have you spoken with the Rhode Island GOP about possibly gaining their trust back for an endorsement in 2022?
Oh, I don't think it's about trust in any way, shape, or form. I think it was just a reaction to pressure from more liberal-leaning Providence Journal reporter. Looking back, they should have spoken to me, had a better assessment of what was going on at that time. But I would say that I've been working. I'm active with the Providence Republican City Committee. I'm active and just voted during the last on Saturday to elect a slate of candidates for or re-elect a slate of candidates for office for the Rhode Island Republican Party. So I'm very active. I'm very part of the Republican Party fabric. So I may ask them, I may not. I'm not quite sure that makes a lot of difference in the voters' minds. That's next year anyway. That's in the election year when they would endorse a candidate. So for now, the best thing to do is impress everyone, Republicans and Democrats, is grow my campaign.
And while on this topic of political origins and looking back at the 2020 election when you ran against Senator Reid, while on this topic, you had ran, before deciding to run against Senator Reid, you had ran a short-lived bid against Senator of Massachusetts, Ed Markey, and you had considered yourself a blue dog Democrat. Just out of curiosity, what exactly is a blue dog Democrat, and should District 1 Republican voters be concerned about that label at all?
Oh, absolutely not. So let me explain. I only got active in politics in the late summer of 2013. Now, I'm a native of Rhode Island. I'm a fourth generation resident of Providence. Raised a family in East Providence, moved to Baltimore, Maryland, and ended up on Cape Cod, all business moves. So quite frankly, I lived in Mashpee, Massachusetts. I still have a home there. Many people have homes in Rhode Island and out of state. But, you know, as I mentioned, I'm a product of Rhode Island, Providence Public Schools, fourth generation, University of Rhode Island graduate. So when I come home, it's a homecoming. I belong here as much as, you know, I lived in Massachusetts. But to answer your question, I joined the Republican Party, and for brief moments in time, during that time, I looked at the Democratic Party as a conservative. What does that mean? It means that the conservative wing of the Democratic Party are the blue dog Democrats. So pretty much, I never changed my values. I never changed the things that I'm looking for America. So whether I had been labeled, I labeled myself a Democrat for a short amount of time or for the longer amount of time, a Republican. The answer is my values never changed. And so Blue Dog Democrat speaks very much for my values, which are free enterprise. We want limited government, lower taxes, balanced budget, and on and on. So it fit well, but quite frankly, I'm a Republican. That's where I belong right now, and that's where I'll stay.
And before I move on to the next topic, so the Blue Dog Democrat, you had mentioned the more conservative wing, looking at the party as in the more conservative wing. Would an accurate description of a Blue Dog Democrat for those watching be like Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia?
Absolutely. Although the Blue Dog Democrat is a caucus within the House, and although I was running for U.S. Senate, when I was a Democrat, I related to the conservative Democrats. They're certainly a minority in the party, and more so as the Democrat Party continues to swing to the left. And that doesn't fit me well at all, because I'm not a leftist, I'm not a socialist, I'm not a collectivist, I'm a capitalist. I believe in free market enterprise. Those are the type of things that I think are important to me, and less government in our lives. I've also considered myself a classical liberal, where the term liberal has been stolen by the socialists, but it really meant freedom and liberty and the ability to live your free will with less government intervention in your private life as well as in your business life. And those are the type of things that I represent today. So I would consider, if people like labels, maybe more of a libertarian Republican. But you know what? I'm a Republican. That's what people should call me, because that's who I am.
And now moving on to the issues, one big issue that Republicans are in favor of more so than ever before is term limits for members of Congress. Where do you stand on term limits, the issue of term limits?
Well, I support term limits. I have been supporting term limits for years now. I signed the pledge with U.S. term limits to support term limits in Congress. And that was 2 terms for a U.S. Senator and 3 terms for a congressman or for the House of Representatives. And so in order for us to have a better representative government, we need to have new faces, new ideas, fresh legs, and less concentrated power, such as with a Nancy Pelosi, for instance. She has so much power and too much power, and that could be the same for any of the Republicans that have been around a little bit too long. I think it's better for the people to have term limits, as well as I also believe that we should get big money out of our politics. There's just too much influence from special interests and not from the people that congressmen and senators are supposed to represent, which is us, we the people.
So since it is unlikely that term limits would pass, if you were elected to Congress, you pledged that after your 3rd term as a U.S. House representative, you would retire from the House and not run for any more terms in the House?
The answer is I support term limits, but in the House, I believe 3 terms would be enough. And one advantage I have in saying that is, A, it's what I believe, and 2, I'm 65 years old. I like to serve the people of Rhode Island and America, and just move on as every congressman and senator should after a amount of time. I don't believe our founders ever thought that people should be in Congress such as 30 years, such as Senator Jack Reed. That wasn't a negative comment against Jack Reed. It's just that, at some point, it's time for new ideas and new representation, or at least, as I said, some fresh energy, because America has a lot of problems that we need to solve, or we could solve if we had, as I said, the type of people that want to come in and actually make change versus hold the line.
And then now shifting the focus to one of the biggest things recently that both of Rhode Island's congressmen did, and you had highlighted this in one of your previous answers, was voting to impeach President Trump both times. And if you were a member of Congress at the time during either impeachment, would you have voted in favor of either impeachment, and why or why not?
No, in neither case would I have voted for impeachment. Well, first of all, you have to have a real good case. And as we discovered from the first round, where the radical left Democrats, David Cicilline, Nancy Pelosi, they were trying to impeach the president, perhaps on some rumor or what have you of Russian influence, I believe. And the answer is that was found to be not true. But just think of what U.S. Representative David Cicilline, as an impeachment manager, tried to do. It's called a snap impeachment. That wasn't good for the people of Rhode Island, nor for the American people, not Democrats, Libertarians, Republicans, and others. And why? Because it was a rush to impeach without gathering all the proper facts, without even, with no representation or from the president necessarily to defend his position. They tried to push it through. And you know what? Haste makes waste, oftentimes, as well as in politics. You further divided the country. David Cicilline and company spent a lot of the people's money. And in the end, if they went bear hunting to really try to ruin President Trump and all of his followers, they failed. But just as an American, as a representative, I would have said, oh, this is much too fast. This is not. An impeachment is a solemn sort of engagement. And to just push it along and treat impeachment in such a shoddy and casual way, the answer is it was wrong, shouldn't have been done. But in either case, knowing I know and feel what I feel, the answer is I would not have voted to impeach President Trump.
And one of the potential effects that both impeachments, especially the second one, had that's argued by the Republicans is that it could set a dangerous precedent. If elected to a Republican-led House in 2022, would you support any impeachment efforts on President Biden?
Let the first, we have to know what the facts are. Why would he be impeached and under what grounds? Did he do something wrong? Was it someone around him? We have to certainly weigh the evidence and the facts before one begins that. So the answer is, this isn't a quid pro quo. This isn't a back and forth. Each impeachment or each impeachment attempt should be separate from any others. And at this time, I know of no reason why President Biden should be impeached. But if we learn that, in fact, there are some real evidence, then I'll think about that at that time with my staff and my advisors, and we'll go from there.
And just to clear up for those watching, the reason why that is asked because one of the Republican members of Congress, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, had tried to draft up impeachment articles on President Biden shortly after he was inaugurated, and it was argued that that was a reactionary set of impeachment articles because of what happened to President Trump towards the end of his term, and it was argued that there was no base for any of those impeachments, so that's why that question was asked for those watching. Moving on to another issue, on Twitter in your Senate bid in 2020, and for this campaign, you were and still are a big proponent of the Fair Tax Act in Congress and signed a pledge that you would support it if elected to Congress. Can you explain for those watching what the Fair Tax Act would do if signed into law? And if elected to the House this time around, how would you try to advocate for President Biden to sign it if it were to get to his desk?
Okay, well, first, before I begin with the fair tax, I did sign the pledge to not raise taxes, not to vote to raise taxes when I become the next congressman for the state of Rhode Island. I believe that we need to keep the taxes low in order to help grow the economy and keep businesses and the economy growing in a robust way. But You know, the federal income tax was enacted in 1913, perhaps government created an income tax to help fund World War One or things of that time. It probably wasn't even supposed to be, maybe it was supposed to be sunsetted at some point. But anyway, you know, we spend over $1 trillion to comply with the federal tax code. And I believe that what would be great for the American people to grow the economy, to reduce what we would call just the cost and perhaps the agony of compliance, is to eliminate the federal income tax, rescind it. So the fair tax is replace the federal income tax with a national sales tax on only new goods and services. So not used goods and services, new goods and services, national. So no income tax at all, no withholding, a paycheck. Businesses don't have to spend a lot of money to be an arm of the IRS to collect payroll taxes from our paychecks. And also, by replacing the federal income tax and then having a national sales tax, one of the things also we would do is we would close the Internal Revenue Service. And so imagine life in America with no IRS, no more penalties, no more abuse, no more political leanings, just no IRS. Now, you certainly would have some organization to help gather and distribute the national sales tax, which would be actually collected on a state level. Now, you know, when you talk about sales taxes, so one group of people that might be sensitive to how it might hurt seniors and people on fixed incomes, one of the beauties of the fair tax is what's designed in it is this. The fair tax is also designed to rebate the sales tax up to the poverty level so it doesn't hurt the poor. So every American, rich or poor, would receive a rebate monthly to offset the cost of the sales tax up to the poverty level. So for instance, I have a family of 5. Our monthly offset would be about $700 a month to offset the sales tax on goods and services. So for those who it would be very meaningful, those of a lower income or a fixed income, it's very important to know that not only will the fair tax reduce our cost of compliance and keep life simple, and also if there's no federal income tax, then there's no tax favors. So we would have less corruption in the halls of Congress in and around the income tax. I believe the Fair Tax Act is rocket fuel for the economy.
And for these next 3, I'm going to introduce something on this show that I'm going to do starting with this episode moving forward. Since I do have a lot of ground and a lot more issues I do want to cover, these next 3 I'm going to do in like a lightning round kind of format. I'm looking for 1 or 2 word answers, or yes or no, or in favor of or opposed to these kind of things I'm about to ask. That's going to be 3 of these for the lightning round. Are you in favor of or opposed to DC and Puerto Rico statehood?
I'm in favor of statehood for Puerto Rico if that's what the people want, but not for DC, because it's built into the Constitution that the federal government is in control of the land and et cetera around what Washington DC is. So I'm not for DC statehood for Washington DC.
Now, moving on to court packing, adding more Supreme Court justices, in favor of or opposed to it?
I'm opposed to it. Republicans want to perhaps, and then they do try to bring in more conservative justices. Perhaps Democrats want to bring in more liberal-minded justices. But it's already been shown that whether a justice leans conservative or leans liberal, they don't always vote conservative and they don't always vote liberal. There's a lot of crossover. And so we don't need to dilute what we already have, which is working for the American people.
And for that, in order for that, like if to add Supreme Court justices to the Supreme Court, packing the court, the way that that would be possible is if Congress were to pass just a simple piece of legislation, since there's no set number of judges dictated into law, it's just going based on a precedent. So if there's a bill to pack the Supreme Court, would you support or oppose it?
Oppose it.
And if you get elected to Congress and if the midterm precedent follows with 2022, it looks like it could be a red wave year, which would probably mean that the House would flip red since it's very close to flipping red already. Out of all the members in the Republican Congress, who would you vote for Speaker if elected in 2022 with the Republican-led Congress?
The current Speaker, which is the current head of the House and Republican?
I believe that's Congressman McCarthy. Yep.
Yes, Congressman McCarthy. Excuse me. The answer is I would continue to support McCarthy to be the Speaker of the House.
And now for my final question, taking a step away from the political questions, my final question here is one that I ask everyone on the show that has involvement with this great state of Rhode Island. And that is, in your opinion, what do you think Rhode Island is best known for?
Rhode Island is best known for the beauty of our state, our most beautiful 40 by 50 miles on the coast. We have great countryside, great cities that need work on. Our hospitality industry is top. And so I just think that what Rhode Island offers is the best of a lot of things, from living to the potential for a better economy, but also just the beauty of our landscape, as we have wonderful land that goes into the Atlantic Ocean.
And thank you once again, Mr. Waters, for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure of mine to have you on.
Raymond, it's been a pleasure, and perhaps we'll speak again sometime.
Oh, definitely. As soon as the election gets closer, you're always welcome back on the show. And same with any other candidate that's been on Ray-ality TV previously. Everyone that has been on the show and going forward, you're always welcome to come back for follow-up interviews. And thank you once again for watching this episode of Ray-ality TV and possibly even reading the political profiles article. If you want to see future episodes on this channel as soon as they're posted, please click the subscribe button down below, along with the post notification bell icon to the right of it. And if you are interested in reading the description political profile articles of the interviews with the video embedded into the article, visit anchorweb.org. That's Rhode Island College's school paper, The Anchor, where I write the political profile sections for these interviews. So the readers of that paper can also get a chance to watch the interview as well as read a description to give context to the interview. I'm your host, Raymond Bakari, and I'll see you on the next episode.